Our city has taken on 185,000 migrants in the last year and a half.
If they're here, they snuck into the country, that's a felony. You cannot ask them their status.
Some of the people who've been here 4, 5, 6 months, they've been arrested 10 times.
Why are they either not deported or not in jail?
You cannot prey on our citizens and expect that you're gonna have the American dream here. No way, no how.
Apprehensions of migrants crossing the southern U.S. border are once again reaching record levels. A Department of Homeland Security official tells CNN the average number of encounters in the last week is 9,600 per day.
As New York continues dealing with the migrant crisis, we have new details on a border deal in the works in Washington.
Jose Alejandro Rivas Figueroa, 15 years old. He resides in a temporary shelter in the Stratford Hotel on West 70th Street. He entered our country in September of this year. He is considered armed and dangerous. He is in possession of a .40 caliber handgun that he had no problems firing into a crowd of the store, striking a tourist, not shooting at a cops once, shooting at them twice.
Developments in the attack on officers in Times Square, allegedly at the hands of a group of migrants. There are now some new calls for the NYPD to release body camera video of the incident.
Only one suspect is in jail for last Saturday's assault involving around a dozen people on an NYPD officer and lieutenant in Times Square.
We also asked that the NYPD release the body cam footage of the incident as well to give the broader picture. We don't want to paint the entire community with a broad stroke here.
We are joined by New York Police Department Chief of Patrol, John Chell. Now, he is over every single uniformed officer patrolling the streets of New York City and can speak firsthand about what is happening on the ground there. Sir, thank you for being here.
Pleasure to be here.
I have to begin by saying thank you for what you do every day. I'm very outspoken about my support of law enforcement, as I'm sure you know, and you and all of your officers and those across the United States get up every day and stand in the gap between all of us citizens and those who would do us harm. And you put that uniform on and step out there every day and put yourselves in harm's way so the rest of us can be safe. And we thank you for that service.
I much appreciate it.
This is getting out of hand. True?
It's getting out of hand. We've put a handle on it. You mentioned those robbery moped gang members. We kind of took them out of commission, and it really paid dividends for us. But our city has taken on 185,000 migrants in the last year and a half. A crisis we didn't create. It's a national issue, but it landed on our mayor's doorstep, our city's doorstep, and we have to deal with it. It's been an issue for us.
Despite what the statistics say, you have seen a wave of crime in New York City that's associated with those 185,000 that have descended on New York City.
Yeah, the crime we've seen that we've never had to deal with it before. So we see purse snatches, mopeds, robberies. We see a lot of pickpockets in our subway system, by our tree, by Times Square. We're seeing human trafficking, which we're starting to deal with right now. We see mob-like activity in stores where they're rushing in and they grab what they can and they leave. So it's something we never dealt with before, and it's affecting our crime numbers, but it's also affecting perception of how people feel in the city. And we want to make them feel safe, but it's a day-to-day battle for this.
The NYPD says it is battling a citywide robbery scheme in which migrants are hired to snatch women's purses and phones. And take a look at this surveillance video. And this is an 82-year-old woman that's being dragged. And these are on mopeds, right? They come along and they snatch the purse or grab a hold of them and drag her into a pole. And we say hired. There are gangs that are hiring these migrants to get on these mopeds and grab these people, and in this case, drug her. And she's 82 years old.
Yeah, this is absolutely terrible. And we put some background. We started seeing this maybe May of last year. We started seeing an influx of this type of activity on mopeds and robberies and purse snatches. And in New York City, when we have what we call a crime pattern, it's 2 or more of the same incident by the same people. We had a 92% increase in patterns involving mopeds. That just took off on us last year. And then come this January, we figured out that there was one person orchestrating this whole gang of Venezuelans that would go, he would put a call out on WhatsApp that he needs 10 phones, he needs this, he needs that. And they would get on these stolen mopeds and go do what they did. But he was a master of breaking into your Zelle, into Venmo. So they would steal these phones, they would clean you out of cash, then they would sell the phones, and the proceeds were going out of New York City. They're going to Florida and Colombia. And you mentioned that morning with the mayor with the vest, that was that person's apartment that we went through his door. And ever since we did that, the moped robberies have disappeared.
Really?
It's remarkable, yes. How one person can influence thousands of people to go out and do these crimes.
Wow. Now, we have had these leaders involved with this Venezuelan gang, and this is Tren de Aragua.
Correct.
Is that right? And they crossed the border claiming asylum, and this started showing up in December of 23. Is that right?
They started kind of appearing around April, May, but we didn't know who they were. We started hearing about Venezuelan crew and what they were doing, and it kind of affected us through the fall and into the early winter. And it was really doing us some damage.
And they started using apps like WhatsApp to start recruiting migrants from the shelters. Is that where they were getting these people?
So we have over 200 shelters in New York City, and a big part of it is in New York City. And they're all just hanging out all day in the streets, and they're just waiting to do something. So this person will put out a call to say, hey, look, I need phones, I need jewelry. You put it over like a WhatsApp application, and these guys will go out and steal, rob, and then bring it to him in the Bronx.
You manage 16,500 officers across 77 precincts, right?
Yes.
Well, these 77 precincts, most of them are the size of mid-sized cities in the United States, right? These are 70 to 125, 150,000 size precincts, right?
These are very large precincts spread out through the 5 boroughs.
And you've got 185,000 migrants. And what is up with the fact that when you stop somebody, arrest somebody, you cannot ask them their status?
So by our sanctuary city laws, we can't ask them their status. We can't speak to any federal ICE component. We just process them like any other person that we would arrest. Those are the laws set upon us by the sanctuary city status. And we're trying to change some. Our mayor's trying to change some of those. When I say some of those, he's on the record now of saying, if you come to our city, you commit a violent crime against one of our citizens, we would like the sanctuary status to be changed where ICE can come in and remove you from our country and you forfeit your right to the American dream. You cannot prey on our citizens and expect that you're gonna have the American dream here. No way, no how.
Any New Yorker that think they're gonna commit a crime in this city, that's not acceptable. And that is what we're seeing. And so we all have a role there. The role of the police department is to arrest. The role of the prosecutors is to prosecute. And the role of the federal government, if a person is found guilty of a crime, is to deport. And I've been deported after they serve a sentence here for the crime that they committed. So I don't have the power. There's a law in the city, and you know my rules, follow the law. There's a law in the city that states what we can do with of migrants and asylum seekers and undocumented. That's the law. I didn't test that, bro.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams is attacking the city's long-standing sanctuary city policies, calling for expanded cooperation between local police and federal immigration authorities. Here's my question. If somebody is committing a crime, I know you don't care where they're from or what their origin is. If they're committing a crime against a New Yorker, you want to hold them accountable, right?
Absolutely. Doesn't matter who you are, what you are, you'll be held accountable for hurting our citizens.
And if they are, you can call them undocumented immigrants, illegal immigrants. Everybody seems to be real sensitive about what adjectives we use to describe them. So choose whatever is the word of the day. But if they're here and they didn't come through a port of entry and they're in the city and they commit a crime, would you prefer to deport them? What should happen to them?
Well, if anyone commits a crime, let alone a migrant, if you will, let them go through the process like everybody else. You see a judge, you get arraigned, indicted, maybe you go to jail, maybe you don't. Let's be honest. Like the whole 180,000, we're talking about a small majority of these people. I don't want to paint broad brush.
Right.
But the ones that are hurting our city, theft, assault, robbery, you name it. You go through the same system like everybody else. And then after that, if you're committing violent crimes or bad felonies, then you should be removed from the country. We're a benevolent society, right? We're benevolent. But we can't have you visiting and in committing crimes against New York City and expect to stay here while you're pursuing the American dream. I don't think that's the deal.
And most of the migrants that are in the country are peace-loving people, right? I mean, they just want to work and do what they do, but you do have this portion that are gang-affiliated before they come or when they get here. They don't want to work. They want to get what they can get from the government and steal the rest. And there is that portion of them.
Absolutely. So some of the people were arrested, if they've been here 4, 5, 6 months, they've been arrested 10 times. 10 times. Like, so how is this possible?
Why are they not in jail? I mean, why are they either not deported or not in jail? If they've committed 10 crimes, allegedly, because they haven't been to trial yet, because, I mean, some of your officers have arrested the same person twice on the same shift.
Absolutely. And here's what we say now. All the stakeholders, I have to do my job. The district attorney has to do their job. The judges have to do their job and adjudicate properly, and our elected officials have to do their job. If the process works, the process works. But when one of those entities don't do their job and let people back on the street, we suffer from a recidivism problem. A small portion of people in New York City, through every community, whether you're a migrant or not, are the ones that are hurting us. And that's what we're focusing on. Everyone's got to do their job. Leave your political beliefs aside, do your job properly, and when I have these types of conversations.
There were 3 teens shoplifting in Times Square. A 15-year-old migrant fires a shot and hits a female security guard, shoots her in the leg. Then the shot hits a nearby Brazilian tourist, and then the teen fires 2 shots at an NYPD officer while fleeing the scene. Tell us about this case.
So, like you said, he's shoplifting. He's dressed in nice clothes. He's got nice clothes on. He's shoplifting in a high-end store right in the heart of Times Square. Like you said, he gets confronted by security. He takes out that pistol, he fires, hits the tourist. And we have a lot of cops in Times Square. So we picked up on it quickly. And as we're chasing him, he's firing at us. Now, we can't fire back because there's too many people.
Crowd.
But what's the scariest part, he's running and firing under his arm like a pro. He's 15 years old. So this is not the first time he fired a firearm.
Right.
Absolutely not. And then we might have tied him into part of a robbery crew up in the Bronx. And there was a shots fired job in Times Square that we're kind of working through. But this is a 15-year-old asylum seeker migrant in our country with his parents, and this is what he's doing.
He's firing into a crowd.
We cannot have this behavior on any level, in any society whatsoever. And we arrested him within 24 hours. We took that threat off the street, and he's still in a juvenile facility, which is good for the city.
Yeah, so he's off the street.
He's off the streets.
Okay, now this is an officer, and there's a group of young men hanging out, and he's trying to break it up and move them on, it appears.
So what they were doing was they were hanging out in a group, and they had some disparaging remarks against female tourists, and they were alerted to this. So they told them to move on, you're being disorderly. And this is where we're at right here.
Okay, and so he's telling them to move on. They're making catcalls and stuff at tourists, so then they get mouthy at this point, and now this cop's had enough. So he pulls one to the side, and now there's like 10 of them. And the one in the yellow decides, no, you're not going to tell me what to do. So he starts pushing back. Now a wrestling match ensues, and another officer comes up, and now it's 10 on 2. As near as I can tell, and they get the officer to the ground, and all of the others come running back, and they're lining up trying to kick the officer in the face. I'm sorry, but to me, this sends a real bad message.
So, as a citizen of New York, I live there, outraged. As a police officer, I wish I was there, I can help them. As their boss, I'm very annoyed at the whole situation. Disgusting and cowardly. This ended up being 14 versus 2. 14 versus 2. All right, so we identified 10. There's 4 we still haven't identified. 14 versus 2. But I'm so proud that my cops got up, they continued their job. They went on their radio. We apprehended 4 on the scene, and our detective squad had back into the rest of them. But this is just lawless behavior, and this is what I'm talking about. There's got to be consequences for this. My cops last year was increased 20% in being assaulted in the city. And why is that? Emboldenment, no consequences. This here, just take the migrant out of it for a second. I said on a call, they should have been sitting in a jail cell the next day. But our DA didn't ask for bail. And they walked right out the door. And then what you saw the next day, 2 of them flipping us the bird on the way out the door. I mean, you want to talk about outrage? That's outrage. Now, since then, they've been indicted, some were incarcerated. Again, you should do your jail time. Anytime you put a hand on a cop in this country, all bets are off. Do jail time, and then for these, as soon as their jail time is over, show your way out the door.
Yeah, you hit a cop, you're going in, right? If you don't have respect for the badge on the street, you hit a cop and you're back on the street later that day, what's the point in being on the street with a badge? What's the point in arresting them?
Right, there's no consequences. Our prosecutions of assaults on police officers is not where it should be. So how did we get here? Why is this happening? Well, there's no consequences. There's no consequences. I'll keep doing it. We have to change the whole philosophy about recidivism and especially assaults on police officers. You should do jail time. That's it, full stop, end of story.
14 guys ganging up on 2 officers, then they're back on the street later that day. That just sends a real bad message. Then they go back to their community, say, what happened? Nothing.
Exactly.
We're asking for trouble. You don't reward bad behavior. That's bad behavior. Most fundamental principle of psychology, social psychology, psychology in general, you don't reward bad behavior. That's rewarding bad behavior.
Maybe this bad event opened some eyes of people in this city, in this country, that we can't deal with this. So I try to take a bad event, maybe flip it into a good event.
Yeah, I've written a book called We've Got Issues, How to Stand Strong for America's Soul and Sanity. And I talk about these very things and not having order, not respecting what's going on. And look, police make mistakes. There's no question about it. We've got some bad officers out there. And if you've got an issue with that, then take it up. That's what the courts are for. That's what the complaint system is for. Take it up. But on the street, you've got to respect the badge. And if you don't, you're going to have chaos.
We're the last line of defense.
Yeah.
We're it. My young cops out there, there's 16,000 of them standing tall 24/7, 365. They're the last line of defense. And they just want to be supported. Let the criminal justice do what the criminal justice does well. Like I said, if all the stakeholders do their job, we're just much safer and our city can prosper.